The United States Senate does not allow voting online. My country has called me. I have answered.
We interrupt this program for breaking news from ABC 11 Eyewitness News.
Reported a 5.8 earthquake reported outside of Richmond, Virginia. The shaking was felt actually right here in the Triangle. We felt it here in the newsroom. I was in our parking garage and the pillars were shaking in there. It was also felt in Washington, D.C. and as far away as New York City. We have a lot of people that are speaking with us who are calling in telling us that they felt it as far as Roseville. There's a woman who said she thinks she felt a earthquake. Her whole house shook. This was in Raleigh. She called her husband in downtown Raleigh where he also felt it. Here's a look at the Raleigh skyline. There are no reports of any damage here locally, but a woman from Henderson called us and said that things did fall off of her wall. She also says the walls were making some noise. We're still sorting through all of the details for you. We know that this hit in Virginia, 5.8 earthquake in Virginia. We also have some reports coming in from RDU. There were no reports of any disruptions, but a lot of people felt this quake. Again, a 5.8 earthquake outside of Richmond. Also felt here in Raleigh in the surrounding areas. We have some calls coming in to our Raleigh newsroom. Now, this is the first earthquake I can remember feeling here in North Carolina. I've been here for 7 years, and this is the first one that I've ever felt, and we're continuing to gather details for us. Now, we have some new information that's just coming in. This is now a 5.9 earthquake, measured 5.9 on the Richter scale. These are some live pictures from WABC, our sister station in New York and New York City. You can see people gathering around outside on the streets. There were a lot of buildings that were evacuated there in New York City. We received some information a little bit earlier saying that the government buildings in the city, including City Hall, were evacuated. A 26-story federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan began swaying, and hundreds of people were seen leaving the building. Officers weren't letting people back in when that happened because, you know, this is kind of just a situation where it's unknown. You know, you don't know if there's going to be another one right away, and just kind of a shocking experience for some people. I've been here in North Carolina for 7 years, and I've never seen this, you know, happen before. Also, growing up in the South, don't have a whole lot of experience with earthquakes, not like people who live on the West Coast and deal with them a little bit more frequently. As far as the RBC Tower is concerned here in downtown Raleigh, Kathy Waters is still with us. Are they allowing you to go back in the building, or?
At this point, I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not even sure I want to go back in the building because, like you said, you don't know what's going to happen from this point forward, if there will be more repercussions.
And it just to be on the safe side, you see the folks there that were there in New York, they're outside, and a lot of people are gathering outside the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center, basically talking about this, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Well, if you're just joining us right now, let me give you a recap. We have information that a 5.9 earthquake was reported outside of Richmond, Virginia. We felt shaking here in North Carolina, in downtown Raleigh, also in the New York area. People also felt it in Washington, D.C., as far away as New York City. And here is a live look right now from WABC. This is in New York City. You can see people still in the streets from the buildings that were evacuated there. We had folks calling us shortly after this happened. I had a friend text me, and she works in North Raleigh, and said that she felt tremors. We also had someone in Roseville that called and said that they felt it there. Here's a picture of the Washington, D.C. area. We are hearing reports that this earthquake was felt as far away as D.C. too. So what we're gathering now is more information on whatever we can tell you about the safety aspects of this, what more can be expected as far as, you know, buildings being evacuated and what people are going to do. But call us and let us know, you know, what you felt and what's going on in your area, because we definitely did feel it here in downtown Raleigh. Reports are 5.9 on the Richter scale. That's another shot from our sister station, WABC, this earthquake that we just experienced probably about 30 minutes ago. And here with me now, I have my colleague Shay Christen. And Shay, you were out talking with some people on the street here on Fayetteville Street in downtown Raleigh, outside the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center. What are they telling you?
Well, yeah, Tisha, I was just sitting at the desk here working on my story about Hurricane Irene, of course, and then we're feeling the shakes, thinking it was just a large truck maybe coming by here in downtown Raleigh. And then all of us looking at each other. What was that? Did you feel that? And so we went outside, grabbed my photographer, Larry Chavis, and we saw everyone else outside with their cell phones in hand. Did you feel that? Did you feel that? We ran into workers from the Progress Energy Center. They were up on the 20th floor. They felt the shaking. They started looking around at each other. Is that you shaking my cubicle? You know, I'll be done in just a minute. And they're all like, no, I think that was an earthquake. And so most of us surprised. I've been here 10.5 years. I've never felt the earthquake like that here before. My husband is working in Rollsville. He called me. Did you feel that? Did you feel that? We felt it all the way up here in Rollsville. And so a lot of people felt this earthquake. They're calling in with their different eyewitness news accounts. So at the Progress Energy building, women working on the 20th floor decided we need to get out of here just in case there are aftershocks, just in case there is a larger earthquake that would come trembling here through our state. We also talked to workers at the RBC Tower who decided that's not right. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that kind of shaking. What is that? Is that an earthquake? Everyone deciding it was, and they needed to get out of these high-rise buildings. You know, thankfully, we don't see these that often, and we are so in tune with what happens, of course, around the world, and we do see what happens in other countries. So I think people are just taking the precautions, even though it seemed to be what most would call a minimal earthquake around here in terms of the size and the aftershocks. I think everyone just wanted to get to where they felt safe, where they felt comfortable, make sure their family is safe. Ed Crump, who's been covering the trial over at the Wake County Courthouse, had said, you know, the word was going around the Wake County Courthouse. At this time, I believe he has said that the trial will continue as planned, but, you know, a lot of people just, you know, wanted to know what was going on and were trying to figure out, you know, where do they need to go from here? Is anything else happening? Are we safe to go back inside? There haven't been any evacuations ordered, to our knowledge, in the area, but I think a lot of people were just wanting to make sure they were okay before they go back into any high-rise.
Look at those people in New York City on top of the buildings. I guess they wanted to, you know, get up there and see what was going on from the top of the building, trying to figure out, you know, what do we do next? We have some information that just came in. It says the U.S. Geological Survey said the earthquake was 3.7 miles deep. Shaking was felt at the White House and all over the East Coast, as far south as Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Parts of the Pentagon, the White House and Capitol were being evacuated. But we also got some information just from our viewers that are calling in to us and writing us. They say things like, we felt it here in Fayetteville too. We live in Oxford, North Carolina. We felt the earthquake here in Granville County, North Carolina. We have a call from our daughter in Durham who also felt it. And then we had someone else who wrote in basically saying, my sofa was rocking back and forth with me in it. My husband and son felt it upstairs too. So far what we can gather is, I would say as far south as Fayetteville, and then we've also got some information that as far north as Rhode Island, people felt this.
And it is amazing to see some of those images from New York, people on top of the buildings coming out to the rooftop, while down here, most of everyone here in Raleigh wanted to come down to the street and get out of the building. But here you see the live picture from our sister station, WABC, flying over Manhattan, flying over the city there just to see the aftermath of the earthquake that they could clearly feel there in New York City and north of the area too. As you're reading there on the bottom of your screen, 5.9 earthquake outside Richmond, Virginia, and the shaking felt, of course, right here in the Triangle, down to the Sandhills, in our nation's capital, at the White House, at the Pentagon, all the way up to New York, and reports all the way up to Rhode Island.
Fred Shropshire is on Fayetteville Street outside the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center, and he's been talking to some folks out there. Fred, what are they telling you?
Well, it's very interesting. You know, we were talking to some folks who were having lunch at Spy's restaurant just next door to the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center. A man from Virginia, another woman from Atlanta, another one from Washington, D.C. And they felt what they said seemed like a train go by. If you're used to living in a big city, you know, you'll feel it when a subway train goes under the building or near where you're standing, and that's exactly what they describe. The building was not evacuated. In fact, they kept eating lunch. They didn't think anything of it because they're visiting from out of town to attend some kind of business trip with IBM, so they're not aware that we don't have trains around here or subway, so they weren't frightened. But you know, I got to tell you, I was kind of oblivious to what was going on. You know, I was coming in off of I-40 and traffic was just moving normally. I think a lot of people who were on the interstate didn't have any idea of what was going on. If you didn't have your radio on, you couldn't feel anything. It wasn't until we got to the parking lot on Wilmington Street behind the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center that you saw a lot of people who had evacuated buildings and parking decks and looking to me, asking me what was going on. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of concern. One of the men that we talked to sent a text message out to a friend who lives in Richmond, and that text message did not immediately go through, but then he looked at his phone as we were having the conversation, and that text message went through. So it appears that on some levels, communications with the cell phone may be getting better, that situation getting better, but still a lot of confusion and some fear out here as people are trying to figure out exactly what this is. We're not used to an earthquake here along the East Coast, especially here in North Carolina. Tisha.
All right, Fred, thank you. And we got some information to basically give to you. February 21st, 1916, the largest earthquake to ever hit North Carolina, and that was a 5.2 magnitude quake. So this one hit in Richmond, Virginia, near Richmond, Virginia, and measured at 5.9. And we felt it, of course, here in North Carolina, all the way south is, you know, Fayetteville, up north to Rhode Island.
Yeah, Fred was saying that it felt like to some people, it feels like a big truck going by the building, or a subway in the tunnel shaking, you know, the floor of the building that you're in. But yeah, around here we're not used to feeling that, and that makes sense since we haven't had a direct earthquake here for so many years. Right now,
we have Julia Milstead with Sharon Harris. Julia, can you hear us?
Yes, Tisha, I'm here.
Are there any concerns as far as Sharon Harris is concerned with this tremor that we just experienced?
Well, I can tell you, Tisha, that our operators were in the control room, obviously, and no alarms went out. As our procedures dictate, we have our crews out in the field and in the plant inspecting equipment as a precaution. But the plant is operating safely, and there does not appear to be any impact.
Okay.
And Julia, we know obviously all eyes have been on Hurricane Irene. What has your staff been doing to keep an eye on that while also getting this tremor out of the blue?
Well, we have been preparing and going through our procedures starting yesterday morning. So we are looking at things. We're watching, obviously, Hurricane Irene like the rest of North Carolina is. We'll be gearing up and starting hurricane preps within the next day here. But our plan is designed to withstand high winds. We're talking about 179-mile-an-hour winds. We're designed to withstand a 6.1 earthquake that would happen right here on the site, which obviously didn't happen. So this is a very robust site. We're talking about concrete walls that are 4 to 6 feet thick with reinforced rebar, steel rebar and steel liners. So we feel very confident that our plant is ready for anything.
All right, Julia Milstead, thank you so much for joining us from Progress Energy.
Now we have with us Mitch Withers. He's with the Earthquake Center, an expert out of Tennessee, to talk about this. Mitch, how unusual is it to have a 5.9 earthquake on the East Coast in Virginia to be felt as far south as Fayetteville up to Rhode Island? Mitch, can you hear me?
This is Mitch. This is a very large earthquake. It's very unusual. We got a magnitude of 5.9, and so that I'm still actually poring over my own records, but that may be one of the largest earthquakes on the East Coast within the past 100 years.
Wow. Are there any concerns for us right now? What should we be thinking as far as maybe aftershocks, or could this happen again? Because people are standing outside and they're not quite sure whether they want to go back into buildings or not. We're hearing in New York that people are not being allowed to go back into the buildings, although some people are standing on the roof. What should be our concern right now?
If this was in Central Virginia, so here in North Carolina, that's correct?
Yes.
In North Carolina, you should be far enough away so that any aftershocks will, of course, be of smaller magnitude than the original main shock. So any aftershocks will cause less shaking than what you've already felt.
Okay, that's good to know, since most of us have not experienced an earthquake like that or the aftershocks this far.
What should people who live near the epicenter be concerned about as far as aftershocks go? Could they feel some pretty significant tremors from this point?
Yes, for the next 24 hours will be the most likely time for the largest aftershocks. They could have aftershocks in the mid-magnitude 4 range, and that's certainly large enough to cause a significant amount of shaking.
All righty, Mitch Withers, thanks so much for joining us and giving us your insight, and we will see where we go from this point and what happens here in North Carolina. Thank you for your expert advice.